Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Tzadik in Rav Mציעא, as we learn from Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Summa Sarva Shivya, and for Ilu Neshama of David Tzvi ben Ruvain. Okay, for Neshama, that's Moshe Shapiro's father. The yard site is today. So we're at the last line on Pei Testament base. What does that mean, Rachsos B'Tfuah? We've learned, again, remember the Isser, we're talking here about the Isser, not the heter of workers and animals eating, but the Isser of, or the Isser of not allowing the workers to eat, and also specifically the Isser of muzzling animals, not allowing the animals to eat. Pasuk says, Lo sachsom shor b'disho, don't muzzle an animal, and not just an ox, any animal, b'disho, when he is threshing your stuff. B'disho, when your stuff is being threshed. Disho here, as we'll see, means the owner's threshing. But over here, so again, but when is the prohibition? And when is the prohibition? When is workers allowed to eat and animals allowed to eat? So we learned in the Mishnah the other day, if they're working at the harvesting time, when they're finishing taking the food off the ground, from the ground, we told us when it is detached already, only until such time that the work has been processed. That it's ready for Maser or for Challah. When it's ready, actually, once it's been finished, then there's no Isser. In other words, there's no heter for meaning there's no Isser to muzzle the animal, meaning because there's no heter for the animal to eat. For example, if you have, let's say, a bakery, the animal's out in the farm, so you're not allowed to muzzle him while he's threshing. But if your animal walks into your bakery, he's not allowed to eat whatever he wants. That's not the issue. He's not allowed to just come in there. The same thing with a worker. So here, the issue here is the way Rashi and Tosfos learned that Parasam Rachsos B'Tfuah, Rashi says, is speaking about where you had grain and now you soaked it, like they soaked barley, dried it in an oven, and then would have the animals stamp on it, tread upon it. This was after the regular threshing took place. Since the regular threshing is over, there's no more of an issue of muzzling. You're not allowed to muzzle the animal when he's threshing, the normal time of threshing, out in the field. Once the threshing has been completed, this is after the threshing has been completed, then you're allowed to muzzle it. So, Tanu Rabbanan Parasam Rachsos B'Tfuah, these animals who are stamping or treading on it, a second treading, B'Tfuah, or Hadoshas B'Truma Meiser, or if they're threshing, but it's not yours, it belongs to Trumas or Meisers, ain't open Shumas Sachsam, there's no Isav Lo Sachsam. Lo Sachsam Shor B'Disho, what Rashi says, Wam Shad Lo Sachsam Shor B'Disho, as far as Trumas or Meiser is concerned, because only a regular Tfuah, but once it's Trumas and Meiser, there's presumably no Isra there, because it's usually not Truma and Meiser at that point. When the produce is being threshed out in the field after it's been cut and now it's being stomped on by the animals threshing, it's usually not Trumas or Meiser there, so it's not usual. So there's no Isra about Tachsam. Tosfos and Rashi later on says there's another reason, because it's Sachsam Shor B'Disho when it's your threshing. Trumas and Meiser is not yours. But what about Paras Rachsos B'Tfuah? The problem over there, the reason over there why there's no Isra, we're saying there's no Isra of muzzling. You're allowed to muzzle the animal when he's doing a subsequent threshing that Rashi referred to. Rambam and others learn that Merachsos is a different thing entirely. Merachsos means when they're strolling, meaning you're not allowed to muzzle the animal while he's threshing. But let's say the animal just happens to be walking, taking a shortcut across your field to go to another field for some reason. You're allowed to muzzle him there. That's what it means. That's how the Ram learns Merachsos. Rashi learns that Merachsos means a subsequent threshing after the threshing is done. Again, you must give the animal to eat, meaning you can't muzzle him in the same way a worker in the field while the work is in process before it's finished. But once it's finished, like once it's ready for mass or whatever, then the worker's not allowed to eat, and you may muzzle the animal. So here we get, there's 2 points. How either the way the Rambam learns that he's walking along, he's not threshing, or the way Rashi learns that it's a subsequent threshing, or a Dashim with the regular threshing, but it's not regular chulin, it's true or meiser. There's no Isra about Tachsam. Avol, there's no Isra about Tachsam. So, wait a second. If it's Trumas or Meisers, let's say somebody looks at my field and I have these animals. We'll see the Gemara's going to explain, how is a truma meiser ready if it hasn't been fully threshed yet? Because sometimes you could assign it, you could give trumas and meisers while it's early. You're not supposed to till later, but if you did it, you could do it. So let's say it was trumas and meisers already, and my animal's threshing, and I know the halacha is, since it's not mine anymore, I'm allowed to muzzle the animal. So, but it doesn't look right, because if somebody comes along and sees my animal being muzzled, he thinks I'm being over, right? It's marasayan. He doesn't know that what the animal is threshing on is trumas and meisers. And then marasayan, maybe bull meosim. And what you should do is you bring a handful of the same species of whatever the animal is threshing, the total of a traskel shavapia, and put that in his food bag that the animal is hanging there. He's got a food bag hanging around his neck. Put it in there, so he should eat that. He should not let to eat the trumas or maisros, but that's what you should do. So it shouldn't be marasan. It shouldn't look like you're muzzling. So what you should do is, there's no isser about tachsim if you do muzzle it, but because of marasayan, instead of putting a muzzle on the animal, give him a food bag and he'll eat that from the same min. Obviously, the animal has a food bag of, let's say, I don't know, whatever it is. Let's say it's wheat. Let's say it's threshing wheat. So he's not going to necessarily bend down and eat the wheat that's on the ground. If he's got it in his food bag, he'll take it from the food bag first. Maybe kashinim v'tola, but kashinim, it's not. Don't give him the same species that necessarily. Let's say he's threshing on wheat. He's threshing wheat, but better bring him beans. V'tola shekashinim yafas lemenakol, because for an animal like that, the best food is beans, horse beans, whatever they call that. That's just it's a kind of a plant. So give him that. That's the best food for him. We're going to mention later on this stop. Okay, so the first point is, though, that an animal that's threshing trumas or meisers, there's no issue of muzzling. No issue of muzzling. For a minute, we're going to see there is. Okay, right. The first halacha, however, we learn merachsos, whether it's a subsequent threshing or according to Rambam that he's walking along, he's not threshing at all now. There's no issue of lo tachsom, right? You're allowed to muzzle the animal. But over mishum bal tachsom. Here he says you're over trumas machsan. That's exactly the opposite we said at the top line. The top line said that an animal who is threshing trumas meisers, there's no issue bal tachsom. It's not lo tachsom shor biti show. His threshing, the owner's threshing. Here it's smash, but you are over mishum tal tachsom. So Sakashikis mentions both trumas and meiser. Then he tells you another halacha. Nachri dash baras shal Yisrael and mishum bal tachsom. If a guy threshes with a guy Jewish animal, the animal belongs to a Jew. The Jew is not over tachsim. Certainly, the guy is not. There's no issue about tachsim on a guy, but he doesn't have the halachas in the Torah. But the Jew is not over. Meaning, the issue is not that your animal shouldn't be muzzled. The issue is that you shouldn't muzzle your animal. You should muzzle the animal, or you should muzzle a animal. So if a guy threshes with a Jewish animal, the Jew is not over tachsim. The Yisrael dash b'rasa, but if Yisrael is using a goyish animal, over mishum bal tachsim, meaning because the issur is on the person, not on the animal. It doesn't make any difference who owns the animal. The issur is you as a Jew should not muzzle an animal while it's threshing. But the point, okay, so those are different halachas. We'll come back to them later on. But kasha truma kasha meiser. We said that there's no issur of muzzling trumas or meisers, and here it's mashma that there is an issur. So bishlam truma lo kasha. I'll tell you why it's not a kasha. Kam truma, kam biduli truma. Truma itself really does not belong to you, and therefore there's no issue of muzzling. But the gedula truma, let's say you replanted the truma and something grew out of that, that's not really truma min Torah. It says rabbanan that you should treat it like truma, but it really belongs to you. If it belongs to you, then it's your threshing. You shouldn't muzzle an animal while it's doing your threshing. So we understand why there's an issue in the second case. That's gedula truma. Ela meiser kasha. What's going? Why? In the first case we said there's no issue of muzzling an animal when he's threshing meiser, and here we say there is an issue. Maybe it's the same answer. Meiser. One is meiser. Presumably you're talking about meiser rishon, and one's gedula meiser if it's replanted. Bishlam gedula truma is truma. Mera rabbanon least gedula truma is truma. In other words, if I take truma and I replant it in the ground, and more truma goes out of that, that's only nisur drabanan. So people shouldn't say, rather than give the truma to the kohen, I'll replant it. So the rabbi said it's also truma. Fine. Alikduli meiser is fluid. If you replant meiser, which is mutter to eat, any Jew could eat meiser. You have to give it to the Levi if it's meiser rishon, or you take it to Yerushalayim, it's meiser sheni. But it's if you replant it, since it's mutter to eat anyway, it's fluid in it. It's on. You do it. You take teflon and replant it. You do a meiser sheni fluid. Here he's talking about meiser sheni, so maybe you were talking about meiser or meiser also. It's not clear at this point which meiser we were talking about. Trumas meiser we'll see that the Gemara is going to give an answer which Meiser we're speaking about. But it's mashma dashas but truma of a Meiser. It doesn't make a difference if it's Meiser Rishon or Meiser Sheni. First place we said there's no issur of muzzling, and then we say there is an issur. So here he tells you that gedulei Meiser is chulin. Not only Meiser Rishon is what's more likely you could eat that easier to say that it's chulin, that it's like chulin. Meiser Rishon, because Meiser Rishon you can eat any place. If I have a field, I have to give Meiser Rishon to the Levi, right? So I give it to you, but I could eat it in your house. You can give it to me. I could eat it anywhere I want. Meiser Sheni, I don't give away, but I have to eat it in Yerushalayim, within the walls of Yerushalayim. So when he tells you here gedulei tevel or gedulei Meiser, even Meiser Sheni, which has some kedusha to it, you have to eat in Yerushalayim, it's still chulin. So what's your answer on Meiser? Why do we say in the first case we said that if your animal treads on Meiser, you can muzzle him? Then you say you can't when Meiser. Elo kasha. Of Meiser Rishon or Meiser Sheni. Okay, so the way Rashi and Tosfos learn over here is Meiser Rishon is usher. Why? Because since anybody can eat it anywhere, so that's like regular. It's like chulin. It's not chulin, but it's like chulin, and therefore you're not allowed to muzzle your animal. It belongs to you. The Levi can give it to you, and therefore you can't muzzle your animal when he's treading that. But Meiser Sheni is different because that has kedusha, doesn't belong to you. That's one answer. Another reason. The other Rishonim learned the other way around, but this is how Rashi does learn. Iboy say more, I can tell you. Above Meiser Sheni, they're both Meiser Sheni. Below Kasha Rav Meir Mirbudas, Machlokes Rav Meir Mirbudas, Rav Meir, Domer Meiser Sheni's Mammon Gavohu. If it's Mammon Gavoa, it belongs to God, so to speak. You're eating God's food, so it's not yours. It's not Bisho, and therefore you can muzzle your animal. Rabbi Yehuda, the second case where it says you cannot muzzle your animal when he's treading on Meiser Sheni. Rabbi Yehuda Domer Meiser Sheni Mammon Hedud. Belongs to men, yet it's yours, and therefore you're chayev in threshing it. So Gemara says, "Hechi dummy, how is it Meiser Sheni? How is it Meiser Sheni if you haven't even finished threshing? He's threshing it now. You go and shake tima b'shibolin, and that says you were mafresh tumas meisers while it was still in the husks before you had processed it." This is more Rabbi Yehuda, a boy choma. How could you be threshing it? How could you be threshing it? It's got to be in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim presumably didn't have fields for threshing. Right, so how could you be threshing it? How could you have Meiser Sheni and say that it's also to it's also to muzzle the animal, meaning the animal could eat the Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. How could he? It has to be. How could he eat it? You have an issur of lo sachsim, right? So you can't muzzle him, so you can eat it. But on the other hand, if he's not in Yerushalayim, you can't eat it either. You can't give your animal to eat it outside of Yerushalayim. So Rabbi Yehuda boy chom, it's got to be within the walls of Yerushalayim. The answer is going shadosh lifnim michomas base pagi, or in English Beth Page, right? That was like an area outside of Yerushalayim. It's like a perimeter around Yerushalayim. So that's what happened. That he and that's considered Yerushalayim also, and therefore there was threshing there. Rashi says hekav chitzon base pagi minuli shulashin trishas or whatever. Shalir, in other words, the area that had conquered it was around Yerushalayim. So that's what happened. That he was threshing within the walls of Yerushalayim, the outer perimeter of Yerushalayim. Iboy say martelo kasha kan b'meiser bari kan meiser demai. Very simple. If it's meiser for sure, meiser, then you can say it's mammon gavoa. But if it's meiser that you bought from an amaretz, so then it's only a suffix. And technically, it's really chulin, but you just give them at liyet to bitachon, you give meiser again. And therefore, there is an issur of lo sachsim. It's considered yours. If you come on to meiser vade meiser, one's meiser demai. So before, when we gave an answer, what about truma? Why before we said there's no issur of muzzling an animal threshing truma? Then you said there is an issur. One's truma, one's gedula truma. You don't have to give that answer also. Truma also nami lakash. You don't have to say one's truma, one's gedula truma. They're both truma. Kama truma vade, kama truma demai. One is vadai and one is demai. Take the more. What do you mean? There is no truma of demai, right? Demai is only on meiser, right? What happened? It's a bishlam meiser demai ika. Ela truma demai meek is there. Vatani we learn afu Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who made the gzeira of demai. Afu bitlas avidui zumat levidi because the Levium did not come back to Eretz Yisrael, so he gave a knas to the Levium, and instead they gave the Meiser Rishon to the Kohen, who's also in the same family, right? They're all in the priestly families they're all in the Levite family. So he says he was Mavatal Vita, because in the Vita you say, Begam Nasativ La Levi, right? Like Yosef, they didn't give it to Levi, giving it to the Kohen now. So he's Mavatal Vita, because all Adamai. And he said that, If you buy tfua from an amoritz, you should give a meiser. Lefi sheshal b'chol he sent around all throughout all of Eretz Yisrael. Rosh Hashanah Mafrishon Truma Gdola. He saw the Ever Mafish Truma Gdola. Truma Gdola was easy because you can give any amount, right? Truma Gdola is even a mashu, and that's an issue. It's chayiv misa if you not give Truma Gdola. If you don't give Truma Gdola, it's all tevel, and chayiv misa for that. So he said they were Mafish Truma Gdola. That was easy, right? Bilvad, they were Mafish Truma Gdola, but not necessarily Meiser. So what do you see? That Truma Gdola, there was no gzeira of demai on Truma, only on Meiser. Elo kasha kama Trumas Meiser, vadai kama Trumas Meiser demai. When we say over here Truma, one is Trumas Meiser vadai. What do you mean Trumas Meiser? If suffix demai means you bought it from an amoritz, we say Truma they gave, Truma Gdola they gave, but not necessarily Meiser. So you have to give Meiser again. But from that Meiser, the Levi has to give 10%. That's called Trumas Meiser to the coin, and that's real Truma. So that there is, because since there's Demai on Meiser, there's obviously Demai on Trumas Meiser, which the Levi has to take from that. So he says, Kama Trumas Meiser Vadai. If it's Trumas Meiser Vadai, then it belongs to it's Kadosh, and it's not the show, and therefore there's no issue of muzzling. The Trumas Meiser Demai, based on the Meiser of Demai, the Truma that the Levi gave 10% of his mice that was given to him, he gives to the Kohen. And if you bought it from an Aris, it's only a suffix. That Trumas Meiser Demai is considered yours because it's only a suffix midrabanan, and therefore there's an issur of losasim. Boimine Rav Sheshes. So we've established here that you're not allowed to muzzle your animal when he's threshing, right? When he's threshing, not after he's threshed. After he's threshed and the process is finished, and you've done all the work, then you can muzzle your animal. You don't have to let your animal come into your house and eat whatever he wants. Or if the animal is taking a spatzir gang and he's walking around, you can muzzle him then. Or you can muzzle him if it doesn't belong to you. For example, it's real truma, real meiser. You don't have to allow him to eat that. You may muzzle him then. Let's say the animal was eating. You have to let your animal eat. That's why he was eating. The animal, it wasn't good for the animal. He had diarrhea while he was eating. He constantly had a bad stomach. The food that he was eating wasn't good. Is there still an issur? You shouldn't muzzle him. You're going to allow to eat. The animal's not too bright. He's just going to keep on eating. So are you allowed to muzzle him then because the food's not good for him? Or well, is it because the food is good for him? It's not good for him. He's getting sick from it. Or the reason why you cannot muzzle your animal is because it's painful for an animal. It's tsar balachayim for him to see the food and he can't eat it. Right? He wants to eat the food and you've muzzled him. He sees the food, he doesn't care if he has diarrhea. It's not good for him, obviously, but you're mitzvah, he's mitzvah, and therefore you're not allowed to muzzle him, even though the food is bad for him. We mentioned at the top of the page that what we learned in the Brayso of Shimon Chayomer, maybe kashirim v'tola u'shakashirim yafosla menakol, to avoid marasayin, even though an animal may be muzzled from eating truma meiser, but to avoid marasayin, that people shouldn't think that you're muzzling an animal improperly. They said you should bring a fistful of that same min and hang it on his food bag. Shimon says, no, don't give him that. Give him the best food for him, which is kashinim, beans. That's the best thing for him. Shema mirah. You should demali lahu shema mirah. See, therefore you see that you have to give him the best food. In other words, he might be threshing wheat, but if beans are healthier for him, you should put the beans in the food bag, not the wheat, because you're worried about marasayim, but it's better to give what's good for the animal. You have to be concerned about his health. Iboilu, maybe you see a lesson from here too, that if even two-legged animals who have a diarrhea should not be eating what they're eating, right? It's a lesson for all of us. Iboilu. Can you tell a guy to muzzle my animal and tread with it? So unfortunately, I have a whole arichas over here about, does this prove the fact if there's shlichus for a guy, so what's the problem? Certainly it's us, right? But presumably you see from here that ain't shlichus enough. But the question is, it's still your animal and you're instructing him to do it. Is it like on Shabbos when you can't tell the guy, please come in here, I'm hot, I really could use some air conditioning? You're not allowed to do that, right? So can you tell a guy chasom parasi? Can you muzzle my animal, the doshban, and thresh with it? Do you say when do you say that telling a guy is an Isser Drabanan, 100,000,000 Shabbos? Shvus is usually, it's like a variation. Shvus means to rest, based like the same word Shabbos. Where do we say Amir Nachri is a Shvus? When it comes to Shabbos, Yisra Skila. That's an Isser Skila. Malach on Shabbos, Yechayiv Skila if you did it b'Mesid. Ava Chasima the Isser Lab. Chasima, which is simply a lab, it's not an Isser of Kares or Skila. Look, maybe there's no Isser there. Maybe you're allowed to tell a guy, you can't do it yourself. You can't muzzle an animal when he's threshing, but maybe you could tell a guy to do it for you. Odil Malosha, or is there no difference? Just like on Shabbos, you're not allowed to tell the guy to do a malacha for you. An Isser involved, an Isser that if you did it with the skila, you can't tell a guy. So maybe here also, you can't tell a guy to do something for you, even though it's only a lab. That's the question. Can you do that? That's the question that he raises here. And the Gemara is going to try to solve it. Tashmat spring of mir nachi adash paras shel Yisrael. We mentioned this price before. If a guy threshes with an animal belongs to go, Aina over Mishum Lasachim. He's not over Mishum Lasachim, meaning the Jew obviously is not over. It's not, a guy is not over. A guy doesn't have the mitzvahs in the Torah. The Jew is not over. Ma'abahu de lo over. He's not over. Ha'isura ika. It's mashma. There is an isser that if a guy does threshes with a Jewish an animal belongs to a Jew, and he muzzles it, he's not over Mishum Lasachim, but it's mashma. It's still an isser. No, the answer is that's no proof. It didn't with the Yisrael. I'm like, maybe there's no Yisrael. By the Tana Sefer Yisrael, since the Sefer that says Yisrael Hadash Barasal Shogirachi, if a Jew uses a Goyish animal and muzzles him, you're over. Tana Reishanami says you're not over in the first case, but it could be there's still an Isser. So we can't prove from this case whether it's Usser. It's certainly not. It's certainly not. You're not over in Mosafsam, but it's still Usser to do. Just like Amir Lakim. If I tell a guy to cook for me on Shabbos and I'm healthy, there's no heter. I'm not over on cooking. I'm not chayv skila for doing the melacha, but it's still a shvus. It's a drabanan. It's a shvus drabanan. No, shvus drabanan. There could be marasayin involved too. Could be marasayin also. And if the guy is doing the work, it depends. Marasayin depends on the circumstance. It could be marasayin too. But even if it's not marasayin, if a guy is doing it, we said if a guy does nachi adash b'rasas v'hera, you're not over shum ta'atachsom. The Jew is not over. Maybe there's still an isser though, but you can't prove. Maybe there's no isser either. We can't tell. So would it be usher to tell a guy to thresh for you, tashma, while he's muzzling, of course. If he's not muzzling, there's no problem. Tashma, the shofel abua, the Shmuel, the people of Eretz Yisrael sent a letter, a shaila, to Shmuel's father. He said, listen, Halain Turi de Ganda, these oxen, what happened was that they had this issue. There were Jewish animals that belonged to, when I say Jewish animals, I mean, of course, they belonged to to Jews, and the Jews wanted them to work harder for plowing. Now, animals, it was apparently known at that time, I don't know if it's true today, animals that were castrated were stronger, worked better in the field. Maybe they were stronger, or maybe they, didn't want to be busy mating or whatever it was, but they were known to be better work animals if they were castrated. So the Jews weren't allowed to castrate. So their Goyish friends would steal their animals, they'd steal their animals and castrate them and then return them to the Jew, and they exchange favors that way. So the Gandhar Amoy Umeganchen Yason, and they castrated them. Mao, what do you say about that? The Jews didn't castrate the animals. They allowed the goyim to sort of go in there. They would steal them, surreptitiously, and then they do them a favor. Mao, they were doing an evasion. Arima Livi is Dafnun. What happened was Shmuel's father sent them, you know what? They're trying to evade the law. You're not supposed to castrate the animals, so they're looking the other way while the goyim castrate them for them. They're trying to evade the law, so we're going to make an evasion on them and not allow them to use those animals. In other words, we're going to give them a knas. We're going to find them and say, you can any animal that the guy castrated for you, you have to sell it. You have to sell it, and you're not going to get it. You're not going to get the value of a good plowing animal. Yeah. So therefore, that we want to say here too. Now over here, this is the same idea that you're allowing the guy to do this work for you, to muzzle the animal, and it's still we're going to give you a fine. We're going to not allow you to do it. It's at least an issur drabanan. The rabbis would say that you shouldn't do that, and you're not going to get the benefit of it. Just like over there where the goyim castrated the Jewish animals, the rabbis would not allow the Jews to get the benefit of that castration. The same thing here. If you told the guy to muzzle for you and muzzle your animal and thresh for you, shouldn't get the benefit of that. Amar Papa, no, maybe it's different over there. B'nai Marava, the ones in Eretz Yisrael who sent the question to Shmuel's father, they all like this. No, the reason over there why he gave him the evasion, said you must sell the animal, is because they held like a Chitya who held that the B'nai Noach Goyim are also prohibited from castration. Castrating animals, B'nai also Mitzuy, right? And therefore, the Jews who allowed them to do it were over on Lifnei Iver, Sitin Mechshol. Lifnei Iver is on any Jew. Lifnei Iver, you shouldn't put a stumbling block in front of a person. If it's a goy and you put Avodah Zarah or Shvichas Damim or whatever, any issur that he's prohibited from doing, whatever, adultery, whatever, and you entice him to do it, you're also Lifnei Iver. So there, you're over on a Doraisa. You see, it could very be in our case where there's an issur on you to muzzle your animal, and telling a guy to do it if he was like Amir La'akim Shvus is an issur drabanan. Maybe Issur drabanan Shvus is only by a skila about Shabbos, but over here it's only a law, maybe not so bad. You say over there they said you shouldn't get the benefit of castrating. There it's because you caused a guy. You were over on a daraisa. You were over on Lifnei, not because you did a rabbanan of Amir La'akum. Here you were over on a daraisa of causing the guy to castrate your animal, and that's the guy has an issur, and you're over on Lifnei Iver. Oh, it's an issur daraisa, and it's, and according to Chitk, it's even an issur on goyim, on B'nai Noach also. You're not allowed to castrate. You're not allowed to castrate. It's also. Pardon? Yeah. Because they're not castrating them. Okay, so just incidentally, I'll tell you that they are. I called the city months ago, and I said, you got to get rid of these cats. My neighbors are feeding the cats. The cats are all over, and they're soiling my grass because they eat next door, cholent and everything else, and they come. So they said they're not allowed to put them to sleep, but they will come and castrate them. They will come, take them away, castrate them, and then return them to the neighborhood. That's what they do. The Arabs are doing it, right? Same question. So I got a call. This months went by, and I got a call from a number that I didn't recognize. I usually don't answer those phone calls if I don't recognize the number. I know it's only trouble, But the guy called again, and yesterday he called, and it was an Arab from the city, from the area, and he said, "You still having?" So he said, "I said, yeah, my neighbors. Are you feeding them?" I said, "No, my neighbors are feeding them." He says, "Tell them not to." So I said, "That's not going to help." And I can't go to all the neighbors are feeding them. So he says, "Okay, they're going to come and take them, and they're going to return them." That's what he said. So he said he's doing it. That's what I don't know if they're going to do it, and it's not going to solve the immediate problem because they're going to bring the cats back, but maybe there won't be as many. I don't know. Anyway, that's as far as the castration. But that's an issur d'oraisa. You're not allowed to castrate, and there's an issur, but he held there's an issur B'nai Noach also. Savar Rav Meir. So Rav wanted to say yimachul l'shchita. Okay, so what happened was they fined them, right? Shmuel's father said, "Oh, these people allowing their animals to be castrated, we're going to find them and force them to sell those animals. They will not get the benefit of the castration." So Rava felt to say, well, they'll be sold for shchita, meaning if they're sold for slaughter, they're worth less. If you sell a working animal, he's worth more. You can work out an animal, it's worth 300 shekels. An animal you sell for shchita is worth only 200, right? I'm only buying out. It's enough that you force them to sell them. You don't have to force them to sell at a lower price for shchita. You could sell it as a plowing animal. Shchita, it's obvious if you sell it to your adult son, you could sell it to your son. What if you sell to your young son, to an underage son? Is that considered selling or not? So Ravachi Aser, Ravachi said Aser, Ravashi Shari. Merema Marzutra, these two rabbis, some say Hanitre Chassid, two pious men, Michli Adari, they would exchange their animals that had been castrated. It doesn't mean that they allowed them to be castrated. Tosa says that the Goyim would castrate them without their knowledge. In other words, the Pashut that we're speaking about, where Jews looked the other way and allowed the goyim to come in to do that, because the goyim didn't mind doing it, and they probably got some favors in return. So, but Hasidim or rabbis certainly wouldn't allow it, but it was done without their knowledge. So without their knowledge, they still felt that they should sell them or give it to somebody else, that they shouldn't get the direct benefit. So people shouldn't think that you're allowed to do it. So you're not allowed to muzzle your animal. Now we know what muzzles look like. You see many dogs have muzzles on them walking around. Sometimes their owners do too, but they have muzzles on them. Well, what about if you muzzle them not directly with a muzzle, but for example, let's say you put a thorn in its mouth so that he can't eat now. You stuck a thorn in his mouth. So he says, pardon?
That's hurting the animal.
That's hurting the animal, but let's say you put it in a way that's not hurting directly, but it's preventing him from eating. So the Gemara says, well, if you put it in his mouth and you're preventing him from eating, that's a muzzle. A muzzle doesn't have to be the muzzle that that they sell in the store with the strap around the back and fits around his nose and his mouth. Any kind of muzzling is muzzling. So if you put a thorn in his mouth, that's for sure, that's usher. What happens if a thorn, you didn't put it in, the animal got a thorn. The animal was walking around, got a thorn in its mouth. Are you mechuyev to take it out? You didn't muzzle him. Or here bitzlo ari. Because let's say you set a lion outside the field, scaring him so that he wouldn't eat. Now, again, here if you put a lion there that he's afraid, of course, in other words, muzzling doesn't have to be a direct muzzle. It could be if you put a thorn in his mouth or you scared him in some way. Let's say you didn't do it. The animal was afraid of a lion outside there. Mao, what do you say? Are you mechuyev to take it away? I mean, Mao, mitzvah, do you have to take it away? Or I don't have to do it. I didn't do the muzzling. It happened by itself. A thorn got its mouth. It was an animal. Mao. Or let's say you put the animal's baby out there and the baby was crying. So there, our gear says, Hemedlah, you put the baby there. That's less of a muzzling. It's not sort of muzzling. Tosas gear says, Amad Bana. No, that you didn't have, the animal, the baby just stood there. And you didn't, it's mashma according to Tosas Girsa, if you would have put Hemedlah, then that would be like muzzling. Or Tosas says the Girsas who have Hemed, like an Agamara says, that's not so much because that doesn't, having a baby that doesn't prevent the animal. If he has a thorn in its mouth, or there's a lion outside roaring and he's scared to death, that's the animal's being muzzled. Having the baby there crying, maybe it's not so much. Oh, he said, "Smell my mouth." What happens if the animal's very thirsty? Is that like, and he can't eat because he's so thirsty? Maybe are you mechuyev to give him water? What happens if you put a leather mat on top of the threshing, top of the tfuah, so the animal doesn't see it? He might smell it, but he doesn't see it. Is that considered? And you muzzled it. Is that considered? So the Gemara tries to at least decide one of these cases. The Tanya Rishoy Balpar Lahar Paroso. The owner of the animal is allowed to. The owner of the animal, meaning not the owner of the field, the owner of the animal who's, let's say, renting his animal or loaning his animal to the owner, is allowed to starve his animal for a day or so before Kadesh Tocham and Adisha, so he should eat more from the threshing. You're allowed to do that. And the Balabayas can open up, let's say, a box of food, a box of animal food, open up a bundle of wheat in front of the animal. Let's say the owner of the field doesn't want the animal to eat the stuff that he's threshing, so he gives him some other food to eat there. He's allowed to give him other food. So over here, so how does this prove our question? You say there's a way to avoid disha. If the animal's thirsty, or you cover it up in some way, maybe you're not over here. Here you see also that the owner of the animal can starve his animal so he'll eat more, and the owner of the field is allowed to give the animal other food, so you shouldn't eat from the disha. So you're allowed to prevent the animal eating from the threshing in some way. More no shani hasam the ka'achla, because he's eating over there. There it's if you're giving him to eat. But if you're starving him, or you're covering up all the food and he's hungry and he can't eat, or he's thirsty and that's preventing him from eating, maybe it would be usher. Or you could say over there, maybe you can't give him other food while he's threshing, but you're talking here about giving him a meal before he goes out to the field to thresh. Yeah, the owner could do that. The balabais could say, here, let the animal eat now before he goes out to thresh, to prevent him from eating while he's threshing. that's not considered a chasima. It's not considered muzzling. Muzzling is directly muzzling. If you put a thorn in his mouth or you set a lion on him, scaring him, that's muzzling. That's muzzling. These other questions, not so much. If his baby's there, he's thirsty, or he's thirsty, or you spread something on top of the threshing floor. You didn't muzzle him. You just put something on top of the food, on top of the wheat, so that he doesn't see it. Is that like muzzling? These questions stand. What happens if you didn't do it out in the field? It says when he's threshing. What happens if you put a muzzle on back in the house? You took the animal out in the barn where he wasn't threshing yet. You put a muzzle there. Maybe you're only not allowed to muzzle him while he's threshing, and this is not while he's threshing. What Hashem told us is, don't let him thresh while he's being muzzled. In other words, the fact that you muzzled him early on before he went out to the field, he's still threshing, being muzzled. When the Torah doesn't necessarily mean don't while he's threshing, don't put a muzzle on. If you put the muzzle on before, also you're muzzling him while he's threshing, even though you put it on before. Don't have him thresh while he's being muzzled. Learn it from your father. Rav Yonas asked the guy Rav Samoy told him, Rav Yonas was a Kohen, so he said that I answer you from Beis Abicha. He was a Kohen. He says, look at your father. The pasuk says, when a Kohen, Yain v'Shechter, don't have any wine or strong drink. You shouldn't bring Ato Benecha, you and your sons, Itcha, Bevorachem, when you come into the Beis Hamikdash, you shouldn't be drunk. Bevorachem Uraser, Hamishta Vayil Shari. What does that mean? That you're not allowed to drink while he comes in, while he's coming into the Beis Hamikdash, then he shouldn't drink. But he's allowed to get drunk before and then go into the service? Obviously not. So you got to be able to separate what's holy from what's not holy. You can't be drunk and profane the work. Just like you see over there, that when you come into the basement, you shouldn't be drunk. There should be no inebriation while you're there. That's what it means. So he answered him. Doesn't mean that, don't muzzle the animal while he's threshing. Oh, but you can muzzle him back in the house and then tell him to go out and thresh. It means don't thresh him while he's being muzzled. Let's say one person does the muzzling and somebody else takes him out to do the threshing, right? So Achosim is a part. This guy just said below Avir al Desha. Somebody else used the animal to thresh. I didn't muzzle him. So I muzzled him. Somebody else came and took the animal and threshed with the animal on his field, or a mazavik b'klayim, or I put two animals together under a yoke, but I didn't work with them, right? It says like but I didn't do the plowing. I just stuck them together under a yoke. I was feeding them or something. I just put them together, but I didn't actually do the work. So mazavik b'klayim, shor v'chamor l'korin, I attach them together, let's say to a wagon or whatever, and then somebody else led them. They got the one who led him through the plowing. Only maybe he's a husband, but the person who set him up, who muzzled the para, or who put the two animals together, he didn't do anything with it. Maybe he's a potter. So it's a chosim is a para, but you didn't actually thresh with him in the first case, or plow with him in the second case. Potter, he's potter. The only one who gets malchus is the one who threshed with the animal that was muzzled, or the person who led the animals who were two different species together through the field. Idmar, chasm b'kol. Let's say, yes. Yeah.
About kilayim, can you use a mule? Can you have benefit from kilayim that a goy did, like, which is
you're talking about kilayim when they were mated, you mean, right? From mating,
right?
Oh yeah, you can use a mule. Yeah, that's definitely. The climb that we're talking about over here is using two animals to plow together under the same yoke. But as far as your question goes, if you have
a mule is a horse and a donkey. So if I have a horse.
No, well, a horse and a donkey, you cannot plow with them together, or a mule and a donkey, maybe even because they're not really the same species.
Right, but can I give my horse for mate? Can I give my horse for mating and knowing that it's going to be kilayim?
Okay, so again, if a goy is presumably allowed to do that, the issue of kilayim is probably only on a Jew, not on a goy, and therefore you're allowed to do that. Right, you're allowed to, and you certainly could use the mule. You can buy a mule and use a mule. Why not?
Yeah.
You can use a mule. But here we're talking about plowing with two different species together. Question is, your question could come up if you have, let's say, a mule and a donkey, or a mule and a horse. Is that two different species? Maybe you have to go based on what the mother is. That's a good question. So again, it's not the person who does the muzzling or the pairing up, let's say, of two different species. If that person did not thresh or plow with the animals respectively. Let's say you muzzled him by screaming at him, by voice. You didn't use a physical muzzle. You didn't put an animal there. You didn't stick something in his mouth or whatever. You just scared him, or an igabakol, or you said the animals come. You said to the horse and the cow, hey, come, and they followed you, and that's how they plowed. Rabbi Yochanan says you're chayiv, because that is the same thing. Whether you did it with a voice or you led them with your voice, chayiv, even though you weren't holding on to anything, you didn't do anything physically, just with your voice. Rabbi Yochanan says you're chayiv, Shlokish says you're potter. Just moving your lips, that's a maisa also. That's also chasima. It says muzzle. It doesn't say use a muzzle that you bought at the animal store, or a thorn, or an animal, or anything else. Your voice is also a muzzle. All right. Moving your voice is not considered maisa. The pasuk says, beginning of Tmura Hakoma Mir, and anybody could do a Tmura, meaning I have a Kodesh animal that's animal A is Kodesh, and I say B should be like A. Anybody could do that. Anybody could do it. So it says it doesn't mean you're allowed to do it. Lo shadam mishori lahamer, not that you're allowed to. Pasuk says lo yachlifenu v'lo yamiroso ve'im yamiroso v'hayu smuraso Kodesh. Elashim hamer mummer, that if you did it, it's mummer, and you get malchus for that. So what do you see over there? Over there, well, how did you make a tmura? Just by your words, and you see you get malchus for that. So you see that saying akim of moving your lips, saying something is also considered a maisa. So you see that moving your lips is a maisa. That's your kasher. Yochanan asks Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish gives a dochak answer. He says, "How many goes like a beauty? The Amar lav shein b'maisa lokan alav goes like a beauty holds. It's a machlokas. A lav shein b'maisa, a lav that doesn't involve any action. You get malchus or not? Maybe over there you get a malchus. There is no maisa. Not that the words saying words is a maisa, but rather it goes like a beauty holds that even a lav that doesn't involve a maisa, you get malchus. Says more mimatzis malchus like how can you say goes like a beauty? Oktani says over there reisha kol mamirin echananoshim men and women. What does that call come to include? Lasuya yorish. Even if your father gave made animal a kodesh, and you yarshimed him, you could also yarsh. So it comes to include even a yorish. With low karbuta doesn't go karbuta. The karbuta armor yorish ain't a memer. Yorish cannot be memer. Yorish and some yorish does not do tamura, nor can he do smich. Now it's not obligated to do smich on the animal. So what do you see? That a Mishnah doesn't go like Rabbi Yehuda. The answer is Hatana Savla Kavasi B'chara Palik B'chara. This Tana holds like Rabbi Yehuda in one sense that Lav Shein B'maisa Lokan Alav, and he disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to Yoresh. When it comes to Yoresh, so therefore, that Mishnah Taka holds not because of Lav, not because moving your lips is considered a Maisa like Rabbi Yochanan holds, like we would paskin like Rabbi Yochanan, that if you muzzle the animal by your mouth by saying something, that's considered asur, and you're over on a lav because that's a maisa. But Rish Lakish will say no. Moving your lips is not a maisa, but you could. That Mishnah in Tamura says goes like Rabbi Yehuda holds that even a lav she'ain bo maisa, you still get malchus for it. But moving your lips is not a maisa. So therefore, you could get malchus for it, even though it's not a maisa. So the question is it considered is it considered a maisa or not? Rish Lakish will say, yeah, it's not a maisa, and therefore you're potter. But it could be that the Mishnah over there holds lav shein b'maisa, you do get malchus. Rish Lakish himself holds lav shein b'maisa ain't malchus, because this is a lav shein b'maisa. Moving your lips is not a maisa, and therefore he says it's potter avalosser. All right, we'll pick up from here tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, from these words from Tana Rabbanan, where we left off about 10 lines down on the page.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.